What is going on, guys? Welcome back to the Gaelic Gridiron podcast. It is schedule release week, one of the most important times in the off season of the NFL, and one of the most anticipated days was yesterday when the NFL first of all released the schedule for the international games in 2024. We have three London games and a Germany game. And then last night at 1 a.m. Irish time, they released the overall schedule in full after drip feeding us throughout the day and keeping us in suspense. Delighted to be joined, as usual, by Stephen Kearns and Kevin Kelly. Lads, how are we doing? Are we excited to talk about the schedule?
Absolutely. There's so much to talk about. The international series, the Netflix, if you will, series, and then some absolutely brutal section to schedule for certain teams, like our Steelers, or other teams that Kev's mentioned before we start recording. So, yeah, looking forward to getting into this. What about you, Kev?
Yeah, very excited. I mean, anytime there's NFL news is a good day, So, yeah, let's jump into it.
Well, look, we'll go first of all, obviously, to the London game and the Munich game because they are the ones that are closest to us. And there was a big reveal yesterday at 12:30 Irish time when NFL they released the games at 7 o'clock US time, and we knew the home teams in advance. Obviously, the Jaguars, the Bears, and the Vikings, and the Panthers for the Munich game. But what do we make of the opponents, Kev? Are you excited for your Vikes to face Aaron Rodgers in London in October?
Yeah, like I said, I was doing my kick yesterday, and I was just talking about how I really wanted to see that matchup again. So, I hope he makes it to week 5 this season. So, but yeah, I think that game is going to be a big one. I think bringing the Bears over is always going to be a win for the NFL with Caleb Williams down. That was just a big news story this year. So I think with the interest that brought, I think it will bring a lot more fans to England, and to Europe. So I think all of these games are really interesting. New England, maybe I'm not so sure on, just because we don't know what that outfit is going to look like. But yeah, I think the Jags have a good support there in the UK. So I'm happy with those three games.
Twist, it was interesting to see some of the selections for the teams. Obviously the Patriots are back in London for the first time in a long time, and they're one of the teams that is going to have a rookie quarterback potentially starting for them when they do play against the Jaguars in the Jaguars' second game in London. But I think there's three rookie quarterbacks, if I'm not mistaken, taking part in the international games this year. We have Caleb Williams for the Bears, we have JJ McCarthy for the Vikings potentially, and then Drake May for the Patriots. What are your thoughts on that?
It's going to be interesting to see. Caleb Williams is named starter, so he will be playing in London. Now, keep in mind, by the time the London game comes around, he'll have maybe 5 weeks of NFL level experience at that point. So there's going to be a lot of eyes on him. There's going to be a lot of pressure on him to basically light up, in London to show that he is the number one overall pick, that he is worth that draft capital. JJ McCarthy, he needs to be the starter at the latest by the international series. I'm sorry, Kevin, I don't think your Vikings are going to go too far with Mullins or Darnold under center. If you want to be competitive, you've got to have McCarthy show up in the international series. And let's be honest, Justin Jefferson's not going to be happy catching footballs from Sam Darnold. Maybe Nick Mullins, he'd be all right, but definitely not Sam Darnold. No. And then, Drake May, the Patriots, they've picked him as, heir apparent number 2 because Mac Jones is apparently heir apparent number 1. That failed. He's got to, to be honest, for him to perform in the international series, you kind of have to have him, like Caleb Williams being named week 1 starter, get him, the snaps, get him the experience. They have that. They drafted a rookie, Jalen Polk, to go alongside with him. He'll be a good number 2 if them two can get going in rookie camp and them two can get that chemistry going early in the season. They could really light up the international series as well in London.
Yeah, it's definitely the NFL have definitely swung big for the international games this year with some of the teams that they're bringing over, and they are really high profile matchups. Kev, what kind of stands out to you? Obviously, the Vikings game is going to be your number one, but being unbiased, which game kind of stands out to you as being the most exciting or the most kind of, to the general NFL fan, as being the most attractive?
I mean, it does sound biased, and obviously I'm wearing a Vikings jersey. But I do think that Jets Vikings game is going to be the most. It's going to bring the most attention just with Aaron Rodgers being back. I think the Jets being a New York franchise, probably a little more known than New England might be. Obviously, New England is very well known, but I do think just the ease of getting from New York to London at this point will just bring a lot more interest. I think it's just again, Aaron Rodgers, he's always going to bring a party, So I think that'll be the big game for the international series. Outside of that, I really do like Giants Bears. That's going to be a great matchup. It'll be interesting to see actually because I know they did the Toy Story game last year. It'll be interesting to see if they do it again this year. Just because I remember watching it and it brought a lot more interest and I've seen a lot more people getting involved in it. So I think that game could be interesting. Giants Bears could be a Toy Story game this year again.
I think the big one is going to be, from my side, it's probably going to be the Bears Jags. I think that's going to be the big game of the series. It's only the Bears' second time playing international, third if you count the America Bowl against the Steelers in '97. They don't travel internationally that often, so the Bears fans are going to be chomping at the bit to get their team over there. Bears fans are literally going to come out of the woods, to excuse the analogy, to fill that stadium. It is going to be, the Jags are technically like the home team and the away team, but they're the home team against the Bears. But I think it's going to feel more like a Bears home game, and I think the pure excitement around Caleb Williams alone is going to bring every fan out of the woodwork because they want to see that number one draft pick. They want to see, some people want to see him succeed. A lot of people probably want to see him fail because no one loves a good story like a bust.
It's definitely the interest. Interest is the wrong word. The NFL international games, the London games, they've gone from being, I suppose, a bit of an afterthought maybe for the past couple of years. Obviously, last year was big, the year before was big, but in general, to fans in America, maybe the games internationally are kind of like kind of like whatever, But the focus has really shifted to them now, and the fact that they had a separate standalone schedule announcement, it wasn't kind of. But it wasn't kind of just chipped in with the general announcement. There was a separate announcement for fans here in the UK and Ireland. I think that kind of displays that how important these games have become in terms of the overall league schedule, the overall league picture, and just how much credence that the NFL is giving to its international fans as well, which is great to see. And I think the fact that there's some of those marquee matchups as well, it's really fantastic to see it, and hopefully they do bring the fans with them. Let's talk about the Germany game now for a couple of minutes as well. I believe it is the Giants' first time to play in Germany, but interestingly, there's only one Germany match this year as opposed to two. What are your thoughts on that, Kev?
Yeah, I'm not really sure what the thought was there. I think having an extra game in Germany wouldn't have been a bad thing. I think that game myself, I'm not I'm not probably going to be looking forward to too much. Two teams that have struggled last year a little bit. The Giants very unsure of what the direction of their franchise is right now, and the Panthers just again they traded away a ton of picks 2 years ago to pick up their star quarterback, and now they're kind of left in disarray with the way their season went last year. So I think that the Germany series kind of got a little bit shafted in that sense. But I still think anytime that American football comes to a different country and they can expand the reach and kind of bring that culture elsewhere, it's always going to be a good day. Tailgating, all of that, and the Germans love it. They have their big leagues over there, so I don't think it will be a failure in any regard. But I think the game might actually turn out to be a little better than we expect. But right now, not something I'm super excited about.
Twist, it's interesting to see that it's been moved back to Munich this year from Frankfurt last year. And perhaps it was curious when they moved it in the first place to Frankfurt from Munich, perhaps due to stadium availability. But I think the fact that it's back in Munich now, which is a bigger market and definitely a bigger arena than Frankfurt, will possibly make up for the fact that they only have one game as opposed to two.
It definitely will. It'll bring out like not just Giants and Panthers fans. It'll bring out all NFL fans. I don't think there's enough Giants and Panthers fans in Germany to fill a stadium, to be honest. And that matchup, based on the two teams alone, may not get a huge draw. But as Kev pointed out, the draw of football alone, tailgating, the party and stuff like that, you will get the fans out for that. I think the fact that there's only one German game this year is because they basically took one off Germany's put in Brazil. I mean, you may see that in the future. They may take a game off London to put elsewhere. But on the fact, on the Giants side, they're riding with Daniel Jones, which a lot of Giants fans are not happy with. A lot of experts are still questioning, why are they riding with Daniel Jones? Their wide receiver room doesn't look great. The experienced guys they have in there, they brought in Allen Robinson, who was with the Steelers previously. They've Slayton, they've Gunnar Olszewski.
They got Malik Neighbors in the draft, though, didn't they?
Yeah, they got him, but they have Miles Boykin. That they're like the experienced guys, and they picked up Neighbors in the draft. They picked up Giles and Asante, so they've got 3 rookies as well. The only thing you can hope is those experienced guys can help those rookies, get up to speed as quick as possible, because Daniel Jones badly needs good receivers, and right now he has average receivers. And if he doesn't perform well by the Munich game, I wouldn't be surprised. Well, I mean, by week 1, the Giants fans are going to be cheering for DeVito, but by Munich,
Tommy touchdowns.
Exactly. By Munich, that might be that chant might be a lot louder. And then Bryce Young, he needs to bounce back big. He's had an awful, for rookie season.
Yeah.
Packers fans are like, why didn't we take CJ Stroud instead? There's always the grass is greener. But if he can bounce back and have a big year, they brought in Deontay Johnson from the Steelers, who, regardless of whether you liked him or not, the Steelers, he was a good receiver. He does get yards. His yards after catch can be hit and miss. Backwards Johnson, or Johnson had issues going forwards once he caught the ball. But he did make
issues with drops as well. He was dubbed Deontay Dropson for a while in Pittsburgh.
He was Deontay Dropson for a while as well. So if he can have a big year and Young can bounce back, the Panthers may not be as bad as they were last year. But as Kev said, they did trade away the future of the franchise for a quarterback that's looking kind of like, possibly if he has a bad year this year, could be a career backup.
So interesting to note though as well, we're gonna get that sneak peek into the Giants preseason with the Hard Knocks series on HBO. So we will get an early look at what they look like. Obviously, we'll still have reports coming in and out of every camp, but getting that in-depth look at the Giants camp might change a couple of people's opinions on them coming into the season. So,
and if DeVito isn't mic'd up for all of Hard Knocks, people are going to be annoyed.
Well, yeah, of course, but you never know what's going to happen with it. So,
well, overall, it is definitely a very strong slate of international games for 2024. We are certainly going to be there for some, if not all, of those games, particularly the Germany one, because I've never been to Germany, so I'm going to use it as an excuse to get over to Munich for the first time. And not a bad excuse. Twist, you mentioned the Brazil game there. And I just want to touch on that briefly, because the NFL obviously is really focused now on international markets, as we've seen. There's the Packers and the Eagles playing there, of course, in Sao Paulo on the first Friday of the league. The NFL is also playing in Madrid in Spain for the first time in 2025. And there have been rumblings that they're conducting a feasibility study for Dublin this summer. So an NFL game in Dublin, or regular season game in Dublin, could be closer than we think.
Definitely. And I mean, like that, circle back to that point I made. If you have, I wouldn't be surprised if you see the London games reduced by one at least, to cover Madrid. And if Madrid and Dublin were announced, you may only get 2 games in London, 1 game in Munich. You may only make it come out to a point where they'll only do 1 game in London, and they'll go Dublin, Madrid, London, Munich. Like across.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I can't see them reducing the London games that much. I think they might keep 3 London games, but then if the NFL is trying to expand, they're not going to expand by subtraction, if you know what I mean. I think they might add the Dublin game, the Madrid game, maybe somewhere else as an addition to the London game. Maybe they might reduce the London game by 1, but then I think it's not going to do them any harm. I mean, they're committed to growing the NFL internationally, to growing the fan base internationally. So I think it makes sense to have, not to reduce the London game, but to keep adding international games. Who would you? Sorry.
I was just going to say, just to make sure that they don't, annoy too many season ticket holders of the teams traveling.
True.
International. That's the big, the big one you see rumbling every time the international series is, announced.
Well, obviously, we'll wrap up this brief kind of digression in a minute. But obviously, the Steelers are going to be the home team for an international game in Dublin. We know that much. They've all but come out and said that they are going to play a game here within the next 2 to 3 years. Kev, I know you're not a Steelers fan, but you're dealing with 2 Steelers fans here. Who would for an NFL game in Dublin? Let's say hypothetically it does happen in 2026, which I think, look, it's all but confirmed. It's going to happen in 2026. Madrid 25, Dublin 26. Who is your dream matchup for an NFL game in Dublin?
Well, I'm glad you know something we all don't, Jimmy. But I think it's again. It really comes down to the likability of a team, in my opinion. I think it's how marketable a team can be to the country they're going to, right? Obviously, you see the Vikings doing a great job in UK and Ireland. The Jags doing a great job here. Same thing. Steelers obviously have their social media doing really well in Ireland as well. So I really think it comes down to the teams that are doing the best job to create a market outside of the US. And between those 3 teams, I think it would be fantastic to see Steelers Vikings. Now, I don't know how likely that would be to happen, but I think just for the whole of Dublin and Ireland, I think that would be a great matchup. Bringing those 2 teams over would be fantastic.
Twist, your dream matchup for a Steelers game in Dublin?
I mean, the obvious choices would be divisional opponent. Bengals, Browns, Ravens, because our divisional games are always close. They're always hard hitting.
Would they have a divisional game across the pond though?
Probably not. That's why, I'm like, that would be nice to have, but the dream one that I would like to see, and it's historical rival, would be Steelers Cowboys or Steelers Raiders. Like the history between those 2 franchises, especially Steelers Cowboys, multiple Super Bowl face-offs, and Steelers Raiders, multiple back and forths throughout the 70s. There was always questionables about the 70s championship game with the ice on the field. There's all that stuff it's still there. The Raiders and Steelers hate each other. The Steelers and Cowboys hate each other, and I think Raiders, as you see from if you go into Pennies, you see Raiders gear everywhere. They're always selling Raiders gear, not jerseys, but tracksuits, t-shirts, jackets. Cowboys, I think, have a fairly decent fan base in Ireland as well. So I'd like Raiders or Cowboys versus Steelers in Dublin.
I think that would be great, of course. I think a more natural or a more likely outcome would be one of the teams that already has access to the Irish market, being the Jaguars and now the Jets. So I think either of those games could be a possibility. We'll have to wait and see. We'll put that one on ice now for the minute and turn our attention to the rest of the NFL schedule, which was announced at 8 o'clock Eastern time last night, or 1 a.m. Irish time. Kev, you were talking about staying up to watch the schedule release. Did that end up happening?
Oh, it did, of course. Yeah, yeah. So I got a couple of notes, just especially week one. Obviously, we had Ravens Chiefs. That was announced earlier in the week, so that wasn't too much of a surprise there. But outside of that, I was looking at Texans Colts, obviously conference game there. You have Steelers Falcons. Now that's probably a game that I'm really looking forward to,
Yeah.
just because of the obviously all of the talk that's going on with the Falcons right now. It it's going to be interesting because what are they going to do, right? Is Kirk going to be fully ready? That's another question that's being asked even right now. Is his Achilles even going to be ready? Is Penix going to be the starter for the first 2-3 games? Is he going to show off? Is he going to continue to be the starter for the season? Like, it's just all up in the air. So I'm really excited about that game. Then Raiders and Chargers. That's another game I'm really looking forward to week one. And lastly, Panthers Saints. Again, Panthers Saints, two teams that again need to kind of get things right this year. But you know, four games there that really look enticing for week one for me.
The Steelers Falcons game twist is going to be interesting. Obviously, Steelers' new offensive coordinator, Arthur Smith, is the former Falcons head coach. You feel like he kind of got hard done by a little bit in Atlanta with the quarterbacks he had. I think he was dealing with Marcus Mariota and Desmond Ridder, so not a lot you can really do there. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens when the Steelers go to Atlanta.
It will. I mean, like Arthur Smith got the head coaching job based on his role as offensive coordinator with the Titans. When he was offensive coordinator with the Titans, Ryan Tannehill played phenomenally. Derrick Henry played phenomenally. You know, they made playoffs. He is a good offensive coordinator. He's not a great head coach. He's a good offensive coordinator. He likes to run the ball a lot. You know, our rebuilt offensive line, you know, our two-headed running attack with Najee and Warren, that's a big thing. We've got, you know, Wilson and Fields, both mobile quarterbacks, you know, who can run the ball out depending on who's the starter. Obviously, it's going to be Wilson week one, unless Fields absolutely lights up training camp. Then you kind of have to put him in. Then you go to week two, which is against the Broncos. So the schedule makers put the Steelers like, you know, revenge game one, revenge game two, if you will, you know, just to get those out of the way. And then the back half of the season, we'll get to that later. But the back half of the season for the Steelers is one of the most brutal back half of seasons I've seen in a long time for any team. But from week one, the big one, probably to watch, not for like terms of football, but the one that all the eyes will be on, I think, will be the Browns Cowboys, because it's Tom Brady's, you know, first game, you know, as commentator announcer, in the booth. So it'll be everyone will be watching that just to hear, you know, what his take is on football. Like for the first year, Tony Romo was in the booth. He was phenomenal. Everyone loved him. And after that, he phoned it in, and he's bringing up the most obscure talking points and like infuriating talking points, like that are not football related. So I don't think Brady will end up that way, but it'd be interesting to see his perspective on the game from the booth. Yeah, and then like the other early schedule point I'll make is you have the Chiefs facing both the Ravens and the Bengals back to back. You know, they get two potential AFC championship teams like at the start of the season. They could put a statement against those guys before the season officially properly like gets going.
The Chiefs and the Bengals, Kev. I mean, that battle between Mahomes and Burrow, it's always, you know, you're going to be in for an absolute masterclass when those two quarterbacks go head to head. So looking at the first few weeks there, you know, into the season, what kind of stands out to you as one you're definitely going to tune into?
So week two, I think for me, Bills Dolphins. That's going to be a big game because both of them could be coming off a 1-0 record after week one. So you know that game is going to be big because you never want to lose a divisional or a conference game. So it's going to be really interesting there. Then again, I was talking to Twist about it before we got on, and like the Rams against Arizona, two teams who could be 0-1 after week one. So they're two games specifically, both conference games that really I think is a must win for all four teams, which obviously isn't going to happen. So Yeah, them two games are probably my two picks for week 2. Another notable game there, Giants Commanders. Again, they both play, like New York plays the Vikings at home. So obviously I'm going to be biased here and hope that the Vikings win that game. But there's no givens in the NFL. And then Washington go to Tampa Bay, and Tampa Bay usually tend to start the season out strong. So it, Commanders, again, I think are another franchise that need to kind of right a couple of wrongs from last year and start to pick up some pieces. So there's a couple of games, 3 games there that I'm really looking forward to.
In general, how is the Vikings schedule looking for you, and how confident are you in JJ McCarthy's ability to kind of come in quite quickly and start and have success?
Yeah, I mean, I think, like I said, having that first game against the Giants, it kind of could be a blessing or a disaster, really, because he could go there and just absolutely ball out, and it could be he could just absolutely shoot up to the stairs from there. But it could also just be a really tough defensive game, and he might not get off the ground like we want him to. So I think starting out with Sam Darnold isn't a bad call for the first 2, 3, 4 games, possibly.
I honestly, I forgot Sam Darnold was even still in the league. To be honest with you,
that's it. Like, I mean, a lot of people have forgotten that, and I think, just like I said, I've said it in past podcasts, but Kevin O'Connell he's a new age coach. A lot of pundits are talking about him as one of the better quarterback coaches in the league at this point, and he's only been in the league. This is 3rd season now. So I think just being in that room with Kevin O'Connell, with the communication, with his coaching style, how open he is and how well he can communicate, I think that there is very few quarterbacks that really will fail in that organization. So I think give JJ a little bit of time just to kind of shake off some of those kind of cobwebs. Get him out in preseason game, get him out 1 or 2, a couple of snaps here and there. But I don't see a need to have him start in the first 2 games, especially when we have San Fran coming in week 2. That's going to be a big game for us. Then we go Texans at home again. CJ Stroud coming into US Bank Stadium. That's not going to be an easy game, but I think that I like our lineup more than I did last year, just as a whole. So.
Twist, obviously for the Steelers, it's a great schedule, really. I mean, look, it was leaked. We had a fair idea before the actual official release who our opponents were going to be. It was confirmed yesterday evening that the Steelers would face the Chiefs at home on Christmas Day. So that's going to be that's something to look forward to already. Obviously, that is the highlight, I think, for us for the schedule. But aside from that, which game are you looking forward to the most out of the Steelers' schedule this year?
I'm going back to my dream matchup point. I like the week 5-6 back-to-back Cowboys-Raiders, the 2 historical rivalries. We play both those teams tough. We play them hard. Sometimes they're low scoring, smash mouth football, which I absolutely love. You've seen previous matchups against the Cowboys when Big Ben was still our quarterback. They were always high scoring affairs. So I think those 2, like that back to back, is my outside of the division games. That's my 2 most look forward to, just because of the historical connotations. The back half of the Steelers, like you said, the schedule was good or great. I think the schedule is terrible in terms of difficulty.
Like the Steelers have one of the hardest strengths of schedule. I think 2nd or 3rd overall this season. So it is
the 3rd: Browns, Ravens, Steelers.
Yeah.
So we're the 3rd. We start 4 of our first 4 games are like 3 of them on the road. We start on the road quite heavy, which isn't too bad because we got blown up by the Niners at home last year to start the season.
That was not fun to watch.
But the week 9 bye week for the Steelers is probably the most important bye week I've seen in a long time. Because after that, the final 9 games, 6 are division matchups. We go Ravens, and then we go straight on a Sunday night straight into Browns on Thursday. So that's a short week. We then go Ravens on Saturday in December, and then we go straight into the Chiefs on Wednesday, Christmas Day. So we've got two huge, really short gaps between hugely important games. Two division games, three division games are on two are on short weeks, and then you have going against the Super Bowl champions with maybe 3.5 days rest. So it's a brutal schedule if they can stay healthy, and if that week 9 bye week can make sure everyone stays healthy, and they literally do nothing but rest up and hit the sauna, hit the ice plunge, don't do anything strenuous, take it as easy as possible, and they can stay healthy on the back end of the season with that defense. And if that offense does what everyone thinks it could do, they could make a push for the playoffs. But if by week 9 you've got a couple of serious injuries, probably Tomlin's first losing season with the remainder of that schedule.
That Christmas Day game is this obviously 2 Christmas Day games this year. I think the second one, if I'm not mistaken, is the Texans and the Ravens.
Yeah.
So great news for Irish fans. You're gonna have to have your Christmas dinner early on Christmas Day because it's 6 o'clock and 9 o'clock. So you better give the mother a heads up for to have the dinner early. But I think overall, I mean, as fans, we're quite happy. Obviously, Twist, you mentioned that it is a tough schedule. But I think in general, as fans, we are happy enough with our team's outlook for the season ahead. Let's talk for a few minutes about the schedule release as a whole, because it's become this whole thing now. It used to be a case a couple of years ago where teams would just announce on social media, they put out their calendar, right? It would just be a list of fixtures. There'd be no real hoopla or rah-rah about it. But now it's become this whole event, and it is really entertaining to watch. And Twist, well, Kevin, you mentioned it first, but the Chargers have won social media again this year with their schedule release. Last year they had the anime style one, which I really enjoyed. I'm obviously a fan of anime, but I thought that was really cool. And as a side note, anime has made a comeback a little bit. But this year they released it through The Sims. So it really is cool to see how creative teams can get with their schedule releases.
Yeah, well, it's interesting as well that they obviously only finished up making them videos in the last 2-3 days, because there's very relevant stuff as close as the last 3 days in there. So in that Chargers video, so they get very creative. And look, I think that the onus is put on the teams to try and keep the NFL relevant in this kind of dead season for them. There's really not a lot happening other than the schedules being released. So
yeah.
Trying to drag it out, trying to release things in dribs and drabs, it just gives a little more relevance and tries to keep it in front of fans as long as possible, because we're going to go into a real long period now where we won't have a ton of news other than seeing the camps happening around the league. But again, that's not super exciting news. It's nothing exciting right now. So I understand the reasoning for what they're doing. I love it. I personally love it because it's news for us, and it's something to keep our eye on. So yeah, I like it. I think it's a good move and a good way of keeping the fans in check.
Twist, how come the Steelers didn't do anything cool this year for the schedule release?
Well, they did. They done a video where they got players in to tell dad jokes to James Harrison. And if James Harrison laughed at the dad joke, they'd release the schedule early. And Debo being Debo, he still sat there stone faced, and Russell Wilson tried to get him to laugh, couldn't do it. There's some where some of the guys are trying to explain the joke, and James Harden's like, "Don't explain it to me. It's terrible." He full on stone face, terrifying. He literally is Debo from Friday. He's a monster of a man. But I think the Chargers once again won the social media, putting Harrison Butker in the kitchen and setting it on fire. Kirk Cousins dropping his chain when Michael Penix walks into the room. Some great moment. The QR code for the Raiders leading to a discount for season tickets or tickets for Raiders fans to buy Chargers tickets. phenomenally well done by the Chargers once again. But I will say the one Kev shared, the Falcons one,
Yeah,
where
yeah.
they basically remade NFL Street. And I'm like, I want that video game back. After watching that video, I'm like, I want NFL Street back. Like, that game was phenomenal. That just brought back so many memories watching that. But yeah, I mean, on Kev's point, as frustrating as it is that like they were dripping and dropping the schedule, like, oh, week 1 is like this, and like here's a preview of week 2, and
Like,
like
you can understand that in terms of teasing it out and I suppose getting people excited for
Yeah.
it, but like in some regards, just release the fucking thing and stop teasing us. Obviously you want to create a bit of hype and you want to get people excited, but because I think this is such a big event in the off season, and like Kev said, this is it now until camp starts, and we're keeping an eye for camp updates. In some regards, for me, it might have ruined it a little bit. I don't know.
But it has us all talking about it, though. Like, I mean, this is the thing. It's like they brought, like, had they just released it all in one dump, it would have been really difficult to kind of. We would have been sitting here taking hours to pick and choose between every game that we were looking forward to and all the schedules. So the way it was done, I think it gave us all time to kind of really appreciate the games we're going to have and the schedules that are in front of us. I like it this way. I think it gives us a little more time to kind of digest what's happening, rather than just, we could have missed big games here and there had they just dumped it all on us at one time. And like I said, I think it's just nice to do some interactive stuff, do something different, and keep the fans engaged.
Yeah, I think in the era of instant gratification, everyone wants the schedule here
Very
and
true.
now, and that's it. But like, yeah, the drips and drabs are fun. It keeps you talking, as Kev said. Like, that's the most important thing. It keeps you talking, because after this, it's OTAs. It's rookie camp, it's mini camp, it's training camp. The only thing you'll get from that is everyone, making mountains out of molehills of like, oh, Kirk Cousins didn't look at, Michael Penix when he walked by, or like, Malik Neighbors dropped one ball, he's a bust, stuff like that. You're going to see headlines like that, like for the next, God knows, up until basic preseason. So you'll have all those clickbait articles coming out like crazy now.
The only other thing I think we do have to look forward to will be the wide receivers series that will come out on Netflix. Yes. I think that's coming out this summer, right? So that'll be like quarterbacks was last year. I think that'll be nice to have during the summer to keep us on a little bit entertained. Now, I know they have Justin Jefferson in there, so it'll be interesting because obviously he only played 10 games last season. So I'm excited for that because it'll get a kind of an insight into how he kind of processed being injured, being out. It was the first time he'd been injured or a long-term injury in his whole career since high school. So definitely looking forward to that, and it'll keep us entertained at least a little bit throughout the summer. So
and just giving Netflix more NFL content, which they seem to be going hell for leather for with the Christmas games, the Tom Brady roast, and now the series continue on from quarterback.
So the schedule releases in the books, and there's a lot to look forward to between the games on this side of the pond and some of our key matchups that we discussed there. Before we finish up, I want to get one, I suppose, key headline or storyline that you're looking forward to most, because obviously over the next couple of weeks, we're going to be, as teams go into OTAs and then training camp in June and July. Like you say, Twist, there's going to be a lot of clickbait coming out, but so there are still some interesting storylines to look at. So give me the one that you're most looking forward to hearing about, or what's the biggest kind of thing that we can expect, I think.
Like, it could be any, like, you're going to have a lot of teams or a lot of fans looking for announcements of who definitive starting quarterbacks are. That's always going to be the focus. When you've got teams that have rookies that haven't announced it yet, you're going to wonder what their position is. Steelers fans are going to be, we assume Russell Wilson is the starter, and he was told when he signed he was the starter, which that started off the whole Kenny Pickett fiasco. But will he remain the starter, when it comes to camp? That's the one that's going to be under the microscope. It's the first time in a long time the Steelers have, quarterback, if you will, carousel or controversy. And then, you're going to look, the big one is going to be like, you're going to want teams are going to be looking, not teams, but fans are going to be looking at, has Daniel Jones or can Daniel Jones develop chemistry with neighbors? Can you get that connection? That's going to be the big one, in terms of like New York. That's one you'll be looking forward to. But I think overall, a lot of people's eyes are going to be on the Falcons, Kirk Cousins, Michael Penix, because that was the big shock at the draft, because that was the big story, if you will. Kirk, he's been asked since then multiple times, what if, and he's just responded like, I don't deal in hypotheticals. That kind of says a lot. He's being the professional. He doesn't want to give people the clickbait or the reason for, coming up with something to write a headline about. But you kind of know that it's on his mind.
Yeah.
We still don't know, as Kev said earlier, his status health-wise. We need to, is he going to be good for week 1? If he is, then, he's fine. But if he's even any way, showing any type of rust or whatever, that's going to be the headlines throughout the entire camp for the Falcons. Penix is taking over. Kirk is ready to go. Drama. That's what you're going to see a lot of, I think, during the off season currently. In terms of
you've kind of named all the big ones there. Not left much for Kev to talk about. Kev, your videos disappeared, but if you can choose one that Twist hasn't covered there that you're looking forward to hearing about most during the preseason or during the off season and into the training camps and that kind of thing, what are you looking forward to most?
Yeah, I mean, I think, look, the Bengals and Joe Burrow, right? Joe obviously had his surgery on his wrist. That's going to be a big developing story because right now, obviously, we've seen some videos coming out from the Bengals camp and he looks good. He looks agile, but I know that surgery can leave a lot of players with a lot less mobility in their wrist. So it'll be interesting to see how much he can actually get done because, any good quarterback can look fantastic when they don't have pressure on them. It's when the teams start throwing pressure on him, will he be able to, manipulate himself out of the situations he used to be able to, like he was in college and his first 2 years in the league. So, that's a big story for me. And I know yesterday I was listening to PFI and the John Gruden story. That's going to be a really interesting one. Whether that case with him, the leaked emails, all of that, whether that will go to the court of arbitration or will it go to the courts and in front of a jury? Because if it does, it could be bad news for some people in the NFL. So that's one I'm really, really keeping a close eye on.
Well, there's definitely lots to look forward to, and I'm sure we'll continue to pick over the schedule in the coming weeks as we move into the next portion of the off season, which is OTAs and training camp later in the summer. I'm going to take a hint that it's time to wrap things up here because Kev is hiding on us. He's gone missing. Gents, thank you so much again for your time. It's always a pleasure. Oh, he's back. He's turned his camera back on just as we...
I will say, I forgot one out of all the things that I mentioned. We need to keep an eye on, can you buy Marvin Harrison's jersey?
Has he still not signed his contract with the Players Association?
He still has beef with Fanatics. So
I think we all have a bit of beef with Fanatics at this stage.
But he wants to change his deal. He signed in college with Fanatics because they're shortchanging him, so he won't sign that until... So you won't see, as it stands, you won't see Harrison and Madden, and you can't buy his jerseys.
Well, look, that is something we'll definitely keep a close eye on, along with all the talking points we mentioned there. Lads, have a good day. And we'll stay in touch, and we'll be back next week, or soon enough with another podcast.